Have you ever looked at a situation and just wondered, why don't good intentions lead to good results sometimes? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty powerful system for making better decisions. It's called value framing, and honestly, it's all about helping us see what truly matters.
So let's start with a question that's kind of a puzzle, right? Why do really smart people running huge, successful companies, sometimes make just awful decisions? Like decisions that completely sink the ship. Turns out the problem usually isn't about a lack of intelligence. Nope. It's a fundamental flaw in the way they're seeing the world around them.
And this leads us right into our first big idea, what we can call the measurement trap. This is that classic mistake of only focusing on what's easy to count, what's easy to put in a spreadsheet. And it's a habit that can seriously limit our thinking. I mean, just think about Blockbuster back in the day when they were on top of the world. Now, to really get this trap, we have to understand the idea of a frame. Think of it like this. None of us ever make a decision in a vacuum. We're always operating within a frame. It's the mental structure, kind of like a pair of glasses, that shapes everything, what we notice, what we think is important, and even the choices we believe are possible in the first place. And here is that conflict in a nutshell. We are just so drawn to measuring things like profit, growth, and speed, because the numbers are clean, they're simple. Blockbuster was obsessed with measuring the profit from late fees. And hey, it was a massive revenue stream for them. But because their frame was so narrow, they completely missed the things that are harder to quantify but are way more important. Things like customer trust, convenience, and, the long-term health of their own business. And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the problem. When your frame is wrong, when you're only looking at the quarterly profits you're making from late fees, even your best intentions can lead to disaster. Why? Because a huge, game-changing piece of reality, like, say, a tiny startup called Netflix mailing DVDs to people's homes, is completely invisible to you. It's just not on your radar. So how in the world do we fix this? How do we break out of these traps? Well, that brings us to the solution. It's all about developing a new way of seeing. So let's explore this method that's designed to help us do exactly that. And that solution is value framing. At its core, it's a system for structuring reality in a different way. It's a way to make the true long-term value of what we do visible. It's about finally seeing all the important stuff we've been missing all along. Okay, and this is so important to understand. This is not about just getting more data. It's not about drowning ourselves in more information. That is not the solution here. I mean, let's be real. Blockbuster had all the data they could ever need. The real solution is a total shift in focus. We have to move from just collecting raw information, which is basically just facts without any context, to actively seeking out value. And value, that's about understanding that has an impact. It's about finding those truly meaningful insights that only pop up when you put all that information into the right context. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But how do we actually put it into practice? Let's break down the four-step process that really makes this whole system tick. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful cycle. So first you observe. You just take the time to actually see and understand reality. Blockbuster could have observed that their customers hated late fees. Then you classify. You structure that information with a new frame, something like customer happiness. Next up, you evaluate. You start judging your options not by short-term fee money, but by their long-term impact on loyalty. And finally, you act. Maybe you test out a subscription model, and this is crucial, you document what you learned for the next time around. And that's the key, really. This isn't a one-and-done checklist. The whole thing is designed to be a continuous learning process. Every time you go through the cycle, you see the world a little more clearly. And that's what enables real long-term growth, instead of just chasing short-term wins. Now, holding up that four-step process is a core philosophy. So let's take a look at the 7 guiding principles that are really the foundation for this whole value framing system. So let's check out this first set of rules. The law of perception just reminds us that people act on what they perceive, what they see. If customers perceive your late fees as a punishment, well, they're going to leave. The law of context is just as simple. Data about late fee revenue is totally meaningless without the context of customer frustration. Then there's the law of connection, which highlights that real value comes from the relationship you have with your customer, not just one transaction. And finally, the law of transparency. Being open and honest about how you do business builds that critical trust. But maybe the most profound, most important principle of all is this one, the law of value beyond time. It states that the greatest value is created over time and generations. I mean, just that single idea forces us to make a radical shift away from short-term thinking and toward a much, much longer, more meaningful view of things. And to round out the principles, we've got the law of collective intelligence. This is that powerful idea that bringing lots of different perspectives to the table, maybe from your frontline employees who actually talk to customers, always leads to better decisions. And finally, the law of iteration, just the recognition that systems only get better when we commit to that cycle of continuous learning we talked about. So, after going through the traps, the process, and all those principles, what's the big takeaway here? What is it that truly, truly matters at the end of the day? Ultimately, value framing is a tool. That's what it is. It's a tool to help you consciously and very deliberately choose the lens through which you see the world. It gives you the power to decide for yourself what's valuable, instead of just letting those easy-to-measure but often misleading metrics decide for you. And all of that leads us to one final crucial question, and this one is for you to take away. Now that you have this framework, this new way of seeing, what invisible value will you make visible?